Sam, what a beautiful afternoon this is. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. It's 105 degrees
It's
out.
105
and
degrees.
we're in a cool studio.
And it's been 105 degrees for, I think, like 60 straight days.
Joe, I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You're from Chicago.
Yes.
Why the hell would you move down here?
It wasn't this hot.
Really?
Global warming. I don't know what to tell you. 5 years ago, it was not this hot. If we had one day a year, triple digits, we would be lucky. 100%.
That's
And that was in Houston, which Houston's traditionally hotter. So
when did you move to Austin?
1999. So
interesting.
long time.
Oh, you've been here a long time.
Long time. So why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves? Sam, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Sure.
Since you're the big shot. Sam is the CFO of Overwatch.
And why would you put a CFO behind a microphone?
Well, I mean, he's a fancy guy.
No, absolutely. No, my name is Sam Persico. I joined Overwatch and Overwatch Data Center Revolution and Overwatch DCAC about a year ago. Actually, I'm coming up with my year anniversary. So I'd actually worked with the data center team from Overwatch a couple of years ago on a project in Indiana. So I was an interim CFO trying to raise some money for this data center in Hammond, Indiana. And Kirk and the team in full force was in Indiana, staying at a compound in, I believe it was Dyer, Indiana. I'm not sure. And they brought me in and I got to know these guys. After we worked together about 8 months and the project was completed and we went our separate ways and kept in touch, but not really sure. And then about a year later, Kirk reached out in a text message saying, "Hey, we're growing like leaps and bounds, this company. You know any CFOs who might want to join?" And it really, right away, I'm like, well, let me think.
Kind of a pointed question.
Yeah, well, it took me a while. I'm thinking, I might know a few people. I'm not sure. And, wait a minute. Dude, are you talking about me? He's like, yeah. I said, all right, let me think about it. And I went to my wife, who's sitting here in the audience right now, and asked her, I said, what do you think about joining this group down in Austin? I've worked in Chicago basically my whole career. So, didn't take long. We came down for a weekend and rekindled with Kirk and saw what the needs, what they needed. And I actually thought I really believed I would be a good fit. So it wasn't a hard decision to make. So here I am a year later. And then I got to meet you.
There you go. But not a year ago.
No, half a year ago.
Probably,
right?
yeah. Well, we met each other in December.
Yeah, you came to the
probably November. So it's almost been a year.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. So that's, ladies and gentlemen, Sammy P of the Chicago Connection. And so I'm Joseph Pinzon, which would be the Joey P of the Sammy P Connection.
The Chicago.
The Dago Italian Connection, which that's politically correct. I think we can say that. I think we can.
Sure you can.
We're not offended
amongst
by that.
here, you can.
I'm not. Are you offended by that? I'm not offended.
Never
I think we're going to be just fine.
Yep.
And I too saw a great opportunity, never being in the data center space before. I right out of school, high tech, 25 years, and moved over to fintech, mostly on the strategic or business development side, and saw a great opportunity in the data center space. It's having moved from Chicago to Texas in the late 90s, seeing all of my buddies get rich in the oil and gas space and me not having that experience. Not to say I was jealous, but I see the same opportunity here on the data center side. Not that we're going to all get rich, but there's a great opportunity. It's a huge potential.
We're going to get rich.
We're going to get rich. Sam,
no, I agree. That was, and I came from the commercial real estate side of things in Chicago, and again saw some of in what you're saying about this industry. 20 some years ago in the real estate business, on how people, entrepreneurs, were able to really make a difference. And when knowing Kirk and meeting Kirk and seeing his entrepreneurial spirit, it really attracted me. And then obviously the space and what's even happened in the year 11 months, the AI explosion and everything else. I mean, it's a great field to be in right now.
Yeah, it really is. And So the data center industry, it's sexy. It's hot right now, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here
Okay.
to share our life story of being brothers from another mother. Sam and actually are brothers. We just found this out. It's a big reveal here on DCR. No, we're not brothers, but we should be brothers. We grew up very close to each other, but we did not know that
No.
as we met,
My guess is our paths crossed probably a dozen times,
at least
and we didn't know it.
at nightclubs,
And bars
wearing
and
Cavaricis.
and the Harlem Irving Plaza and
That's
things
right.
like that. The Brickyard. Mall.
Much tighter pants than we're wearing today, and kind of flowy, silky shirts. I would assume.
Well, you were a little younger. I was still more.
Well,
in
I mean, not that much.
The 70s, and
But I can guarantee you, we bought. Did you have a horn?
I had a horn.
So
I had a horn.
You had an Italian horn.
I did not have a pinky ring, but I had a horn.
You did not have a pinky
I did
ring.
not have a pinky
That's
ring.
universal.
I know. I stopped at the horn, and I wore a horn from 6th grade through maybe freshman year of high school.
Did you have the cross too?
You know what? I did, but the horn was
Took precedent over the cross.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Which I'm not sure people understand the Italian horn history, which we're not going to go into, but apparently it's a good luck, right? It's a form of good luck, right?
Yeah.
Italians need as much luck as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's good.
When all the friends had them, and I gotta get my horn. I might have gotten it for a confirmation gift when I was in when you make your confirmation, 7th grade in the Catholic Church.
Roughly,
yeah. I think that's when I got.
That's when you got
horn.
it.
Yeah,
Okay, so you got it's your confirmation gift. Now, did you have a jacket that was white and on the sleeve was the Italian flag?
No.
Okay.
No.
You drew the line.
I drew the line.
All right. Okay. All right.
So, tell us where in Chicago you were from, because this ties into why we were so close and where we grew up. But what about your neighborhood? You were in the city of Chicago.
Yes.
I actually was not. So go.
Well, you were. We'll get to your area,
yeah.
but you were considered the third Italian district of Little Italy of Chicago. So Norwich and west on that the Harlem Avenue side, but. Originally, I was born at Lawrence. So I was born at Lawrence and in the Kennedy, basically. That's where we were born. There's the big. Remember the lips, the kiss sign?
Yes, the magic kiss.
The magic kiss. I think that sign was attached to my apartment building off of the Kennedy. I really do. I believe that was because we would see it and we would know we were home as kids because we had no sense of direction. We had no idea. Parents were smoking in the car, did not roll down the windows. It was a whole thing. My mom's going to get mad at me for saying that. But the fact of the matter is that was just a terrible experience. And we were happy to be home because we can breathe. But yeah, that part of Chicago, my dad was a cop. We did a podcast before kind of explaining my father being an interesting fella. But and then we moved to Laramie and Diversey.
Okay.
Right, but there was a great Butera, which I don't think Buteras are still around, where grandma can go with a little cart, go get her groceries, put them in a little cart, and walk them home.
Buteras are still around.
Buteras are still around.
There's still one in Norwich.
Okay, and I remember there was a some odd number of flavors. What was it, 21 flavors or 31 flavors?
Baskin-Robbins, 31 flavors.
31 flavors that all the other kids got to visit but me. And I would walk by and be envious of the fact that there was 31 flavors that I never could sample.
No.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Appreciate that one. But the reason why I couldn't eat those flavors is, it's made me the better man I am today.
Oh, hey.
So,
well, you didn't grow up in the nicer part of Harlem Avenue where we had the Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors.
There you go.
Across from the Harlem Irving Plaza.
See, you had all the good stuff.
Norwich
Sam.
Commons, I think it was called. But fun fact is, Norwich is the only suburb that's completely surrounded by the city of Chicago.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. So to the west of Norwich is Chicago, right before O'Hare Airport. It's right by O'Hare.
Yeah.
And back in the day, Chicago was annexing all this land, Jefferson Park and Norwood Park and such. And the people in Norwich said, no, we're good on our own. We don't need the Chicago police. We don't need any of that stuff.
Wow.
And so they turned it down. And about 10 years later, they realized that was a huge mistake and went back to the city to try to get annexed. And
wow.
Nope, sorry, guys, you blew it.
And Norwich also had the world famous Rolling Stone records.
Absolutely.
You can still get your music needs from Rolling Stones, which is a sponsor of DC. No, they're not.
Well, maybe
maybe we
should.
can, based
Yeah.
upon this conversation. They may want to throw some money our way.
They still have. They used to have the records hanging from the ceiling. They'd all be on strings when you walk in. Then they had the CDs,
and then they moved to CDs because the technology changed.
So I literally grew up 2 blocks from there. So it was a regular stop for me to go into Rolling Stone.
And a regular stop for my brother, who was a musician. So that was a regular stop.
My older brother, when he went away to college, had left his turntable, and that's where I went and bought albums. I think my first this was a '77 or so, Queen, a night at the opera, or one of those. And I would built my record collection at Rolling Stone Records.
And I always thought the people that got to work there, what was that process to get the job there? Because they just had a swagger about them. They were just better than everyone else because they had access to all that music.
Well, and back in the 60s and 70s, but there was still marijuana paraphernalia and stuff that was being sold there. So it still had that vibe, had that 70s Led Zeppelin.
And professional musicians, bands would come to Rolling Stone and they would do signings and they would do all of that. Absolutely. So that was the good old days, Sam.
That is the neighborhood. We're west of Harlem Avenue, where I grew up, and you were just east of Harlem Avenue.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. When I met Joe came to the compound in November to meet with the team. Kirk had met Joe and loved his background, and you guys knew each other from your kids playing sports together. And we had our ELT stays at the compound in Austin. When I fly in, I still live in Chicago, I live in Elmhurst now, but I live in the Chicago area. So when I fly down, I stay at the compound. It's a house, a 4 or 5 bedroom house we rent. Instead of having a regular office, we do a lot of work. We collaborate there together. And we actually, when I'm there or when the team is there, we spend hours and hours together, and we are very, very productive. So,
and make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this guy has penciled out the fact that we save a significant amount of money on hotel visits, restaurant fees.
I wouldn't be doing my job if we didn't do that. But no, it worked in Indiana, and Kirk replicated it here in Austin.
Yeah.
But also, that's a perfect time to invite people who we want to bring into our orbit to come and get to know us and work with us. So he brings Joe Pinzon one night. And he mentioned you a few times before. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to bring Joe. And Joe shows up, and we're doing our thing. This is 6, 7 in the evening. Cocktails were starting to flow and things like that. And Joe and I just start talking. And I don't even think he told me you were from Chicago. He might have told me you were from Chicago. I'd say,
but he didn't need to. Once we looked in each other's eyes,
it was like it literally took 10 minutes, and we're finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah.
I mean, it's talking about the places and where we grew up and the mannerisms and the people. It's amazing. Yeah. And so that was 7, 8 months ago. But that's why we're doing a podcast together, because this is.
And I really knew you were from that area when I yelled reverse skate. And all of a sudden, you decided to go backwards on the island from the Axel roller rink reference. If anyone is from that area,
or anyone who lived by a roller rink, absolutely, yeah, that was. I think you're right. That might have been the first thing you read.
I think that is. I go reverse skate. Sam all of a sudden started going backwards. It was like an instant thing.
So the roller rink was right across from the Norwich theaters, and I don't know if you ever would go to the Norwich theaters.
100%, but which was kind of back.
It was set back, right? Absolutely.
It was set back a little bit.
They had a thing on for the kids on Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday mornings, called Free Fun Show, and it was the funnest thing as a kid growing up in that area. And again, it was a suburb, but it was not it was a city basically. And you would get hundreds of kids for some movie that they would put on a Wednesday morning, and it was the biggest. Growing up, it was like, oh my God, we're going to the Free Fun Show, and you had to get tickets. Remember, we had to get tickets for that. And if you got a ticket to the Free Fun Show, it was so exciting. And it was literally, there's factories all around there.
Yeah,
it's in the middle of the factory.
The cookie joint that burnt down.
Maurice Linnell.
Yeah.
So I was down the street from Maurice Linnell cookies. I would smell the Maurice Linnell cookies.
By the way, the cookie joint burnt down.
Yeah. It's just like a few other places. a few other places in the
Yeah,
area.
that burnt down.
No reference to Goodfellas here, but take it what it is. But it was a great place to grow up, and the Axle roller rink was where we went on Saturdays. Where, like in fifth or sixth grade, if you had a date, you could bring him to the Axle roller rink, and it was like
I
you were going
100%
steady.
agree with you.
Yeah, you were
I
going
100
steady if you brought a girl there, and you were able to hold hands.
And because you had your horn popping, I can just see you with a Billy Joel song popping in the background, and all of a sudden you've got some swagger in that wheel, man.
Trying to
I mean, I see you going left and right. You're moving. I do not see you just trying. I see you going.
I'm gonna stay though. That was disco era, so it really was like Bee Gees and
There
whenever
was
we started going, yeah.
yeah.
So it was. It would. I remember. Yeah, they would the lights and they have the different songs, but it was. So that was probably in 76, 77, 78 when I
Yeah.
went. So it was more
Do you
disco era.
remember though you had to make a decision in your life that when you saw the kid who had his own roller skates and he would be able to roller skate backwards and he picked the girls up off the ground, you had to say to yourself, hey, I'm going this direction, or let's leave it for him. Because what is that guy doing now? What's the guy who's the skater doing right now, the really good skater? You think he's still kind of doing it?
So you always had those people who were, like you said,
Yeah, the black
that
black leather. We all had the rented
absolutely.
tan ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Never tried to
Yeah.
be that. Kind of knew that
I
wasn't
tried
my
not to be
calling.
that guy
No,
either.
no. But yeah, I don't know what those guys. They hung out at the 1-2-3 club. Then after that, when they got a little older, and you never know. But no, I have no
The
idea.
1-2-3 club.
Yeah, absolutely. We still saw, and where I live now in Elmhurst, which is a few suburbs west of that area, but it's still very Irish and Italian. You'll see some of those guys at some of the Italian restaurants and downtown. You still see the group that still hangs out. And it's great. I mean, it's really it's a good culture. I mean, to some extent, it's a good culture. You know, there was a bad side to it, but it really growing up and seeing that still, it's obviously that's what we're talking about it because
Yeah.
it was really it was a wonderful
Huge
culture to grow up with.
memories.
Yeah, huge memories,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it just it was worth it. Growing, because I always used to envy the kids who grew up in Downers Grove or Palatine or
Right.
whatever. You know, I was like, oh, they had so much, but we really had so much.
You did.
In those
your
neighborhoods.
parents allowed you
Yeah.
to expand and grow and go take the bus to the lake, go to a Cubs game when you were underage and zero parental guidance and
Let's spend a few minutes with that. So Joe here is a huge
huge
fan.
Cubs fan.
Huge Cubs fan.
World champion. By the way, they're one of 5 other teams that have won 11,000 games in franchise history.
There you go.
And the White Sox have not. I'm just saying that out loud.
So I'm one of those rare Chicagoans who really doesn't hate the White Sox. I'm kind of a fan, but more of a Cubs fan because I grew up taking the Addison bus to Wrigley Field from Harlem Avenue. It took about a half hour with all the stops, but my friends and I lived closest to Addison off of Harlem. We'd have a sleepover at my house. I remember doing this in 6th grade, I think it was, and we woke up at 5 a.m. to get on the Addison bus for I think it was a 120 game back then. It still is. The reason is, in the bleachers back then, well, it still is general admission. So we wanted to be the first in line so we could be in the left field bleachers front row to try to catch home runs from Dave Kingman. And it was just it was a wonderful experience to go to Wrigley and able to do that without, like you said, without parental supervision. It didn't matter. Just get on the bus, you're down there. And I'll never forget, we were the first in line, and a friend and I were 4 of us, and 2 of us went for a walk around while the other 2 were first in line, and we came back and they were gone. And we said, what happened? And the people behind us said, oh, they needed some people to clean up the field, so they let those 2 in.
Wow.
So the Cincinnati Reds were in town, and they were able to go and clean the field.
Wow.
They had a George Foster signed bat when they came out.
Wow.
I cried. I was sick. I'm like, I cannot believe I missed that. Unbelievable. But again, Cubs fan.
Wrigley Field, and this is nothing against being sacrilegious in any way possible, but that Wrigley Field is the church for baseball. If you have not been part of walking for the first time through the gates, giving your ticket, scanning your ticket now, and walking up through the first, it's about the first entrance off of the first base side.
Yeah.
You see the field at eye level, and I don't care who you are. I don't care. You will cry. I cry. I feel it's church. It's church.
So you're walking up exactly. You see the field eye level, and you have the grandstands over
That's
your
it.
head.
That's
But
it.
what's the first thing you see? Because you look to the outfield.
You look at that. You look at that scoreboard
And the beautiful ivy on the wall.
Beautiful ivy on the wall. Which I'm going to say something about my wife right now, which she did something terrible, but I'm kind of happy she did. We went to see Billy Joel. It was on the field. I could not believe that they allowed us on the field, but everyone was on the field, and you exited the concert through the ivy. And there's signs everywhere that says, do not take the ivy. And she had to take the ivy for my daughter, who's also a big-time Cubs fan.
That's
so she
awesome.
stole the ivy, and she pressed it and made a whole thing. But
that's great.
But my wife stole the ivy from Wrigley Field.
That's a beautiful story.
Yes.
They redid the bleachers. I don't know how many years ago, but we had a couple of bleacher seats from the old stadium that were in the we kept in our backyard. But we've been there. My wife and I were just there for a Cubs game last weekend, and the Cubs are when the Cubs are playing well, and it hasn't been that often in our history of. I've been going to Cubs game now for 6 decades.
Well, we're the lovable losers. Who cares if they win? It's a bonus.
But first of all, the stadium since Harry Carey's era in the mid '80s has been full almost all the time. But the last few years have been down. So, but there's a vibe again. When they're playing well and there's a vibe, we went to a couple of the same bars. We didn't even go to the game. We watched the Aaron Waters show from Old Crow Smokehouse or whatever, which has a rooftop area right down on Clark Street. But there's a couple of old bars like Sluggers and Bernie's and I forgot the one that's by the bleachers, Murphy's. Murphy's, yeah. We walked into Bernie's, and it's the same as it was 20, 30 years ago, whenever they've been good. And the crowd, you had people in their 20s, people in their 30s, people in their 40s, people in their 50s, people in their 60s, all in this outdoor fun area, all having a great time. Families having a great time. That's Wrigley.
I think Sam is predicting the 2023 World Champion Chicago Cubs. I think he's making a prediction.
I think they're close.
You're feeling it, right?
I think
wild
they're
card
close,
fever, right? We're in the wild card. That's better than not.
I like being in. I just like
St. Louis is in last place. That's not bad, right?
But you're right. This year, like the Sox
and the Sox are in last place
worst,
or close.
That
to.
makes you very happy. I don't care that much about that. But
bit.
I like when the Cubs are playing well, and it seems like they got a pretty cool thing going on right now. But so I was at the 2016. Linda and I were at the game 5, so the last home game. They didn't win it then, but they won. They had to win that game to go back to Cleveland, and that was pretty magical. That we were in the bleachers, ton of fun. So I that's one of the memories that I have that couldn't believe it. And then when they won it, 2 nights later, 2 or 3 nights later in Cleveland, I cried. There was so much emotion for being such a fan of the Cubs and watching like my relatives, these Italian immigrants, when they moved to the city of Chicago, and my grandfather they had WGN TV, and they would watch the Cubs games, and it was religion. It was religion in my family. So when and because of Facebook and stuff, you're able to keep in, with cousins and stuff. And everyone in our family, when the Cubs won, kind of posted themselves or videos or whatever, like being so emotional for our deceased relatives, basically. But they were just diehard Cub fans. And
because those deceased relatives lived and died at a very good age. Like my grandfather died at 85.
Oh, yeah.
And lived and died without seeing a World Series.
They saw a couple of playoff series. In
80s.
84,
I
84,
mean, the
89.
80s were
Yeah,
great. The 70s were terrible.
yeah.
80s were great, right?
But it,
You had Jody Davis
oh yeah, that
Jump, right?
yeah. Well,
You
the
had
Ryan Sandberg,
what
Jody Davis, yeah.
WGM would create that theme song that we couldn't wait to hear, and that's when you got to see what 81 games a year
Yep.
on the TV. Well, you got to see all of them on WGN,
WGM, but yeah, they
but the 81
broadcast
home
everything.
games
Absolutely,
every year, yeah,
absolutely.
it was wonderful.
You come home from school and
Yeah.
be growing, and it was the Cubs going.
Yeah.
And
My dad, Sam, I know I told you this, but my dad dropped us off before work at Wrigley Field during the summer break. So I got to see the majority of my entire life, the majority of home games for the Chicago Cubs for free, eat hot dogs from Andy, get with the Andy Fran guys. And then I think it was before Aramark came in and
yeah,
started
explain
running
who the Andy Frame guys.
the Andy
If people
Frank
like-
guys were the security guys, and they would just, your dad drops you off. He's a Chicago copper in the area, and you get anything you want. But we had to start there at 8. The game, every home game was 105 because
Yep,
we
at
didn't have
105.
lights.
You're right. It was 105.
Yeah, we didn't have lights, so we stuck around. We ran around a little bit around the park and watched the game and went home every day, every home game.
Yeah. No, I would recommend anybody in the summer,
Yeah.
midsummer, plan a weekend in Chicago and go to Wrigley. I brought some guys back right around 2016, 2017. We were doing a deal, Chicago Real, I forgot what it was, but we brought these guys in from New York who were bringing in some equity to the deal. And it was a Monday night and the Mets were in town. I said, I'll go to the Cubs game. There was 4 of them and they had never, one of them had been in Chicago, but 3 had not. And I think it was a year they were pretty good because it was 2016 or 17. So the park was full on a Monday night. And Sluggers was the other bar right across from the home plate, where you go in that right behind home plate. And they have batting cages at Sluggers, and they have the Papa shots and the batting cages. We're there on a Monday night till midnight after the game. And these New York people, like real New York, we don't have anything like this in New York. We have nothing like this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
It's a Monday night, and it's
First of all, the park's in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yep.
I mean, it's in the middle. I mean, you don't know it's there unless you do a flyover or you accidentally drive up on it. It's in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And beginning parking back then, what people in the area would do is they would sit with a lawn chair and let someone park their car in their garage.
Yeah.
There wasn't any parking available.
Yeah. You can still, they actually do that on Spot. I think it's Spot Hero now and some other parking apps, but people will rent their driveways or their garages through that. And you can actually still do that. So that's our Cubs.
Yeah, that's the
background.
Cubs. We haven't even talked about the coach.
Oh.
We haven't even talked about the Bears.
Should we go back to the data center industry for a bit?
Well, we could, but I think everyone in the data center world need to know that we're their resource for Chicago, everything.
All things Chicago.
All things Chicago.
And there's a few things going on up there. The AFCOM, we went to the AFCOM golf outing a few weeks ago. My daughter Shay now works for Overwatch, so she joined me there.
Very good. She's a very good employee.
Rob Daly, the head of our construction, president of our newly formed Overwatch Construction, is from Chicago. So he'll be doing a podcast soon, I think, with Kirk, or maybe you, I'm not sure. So yeah, we have a very strong, why do you think it is? Why do you think Kirk and the team brought in and liked the Chicago people? What do you think it is about us?
First of all, I think we're a handsome people. So across the board,
whether we have a beard, whether
we're bald, it doesn't make a difference. We're a special person. I really think it may just be happenstance, but I think at the end of the day, there's a grit that comes from Chicago people. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a difficult life. It's not, we have wonderful, wonderful lessons. It's cold. We've had some pretty hard winters. It's difficult. You see your parents really work hard to provide for your family. So you get to witness that. You then have to figure out a path of success for yourself, and they're all different. And there is nothing cookie cutter about Chicago. My brother goes in one direction. I went in another direction. My sister went in another direction. Even the schooling system, we went to 3 different high schools since we went to Catholic schools. You don't go to the same school. Well, my sister couldn't because they were either all boy or all girls, but now they're co-ed. You still select the high school that's best for your area, not that you're zoned to.
And they can recruit for
And they
sports.
recruit you. And so, and then you have to take the bus or the train to school. It's not like you can take your bike. Like, and if you did decide to take your bike's not going to be there when you get out of school anyway. So it's a different way to live.
Well, you told a story the other day about when you first moved to Houston and you started, you had to lock everything up.
So we moved to Sugar Land, Texas, which was apparently one of the safest places to live in Houston. But even with that knowledge, my wife said, let's go buy some lawn furniture. And we did. And we went to Lawn King or whatever it was, Chair King. And we bought our furniture. And we went to Lowe's the same day. And she goes, why are you going to Lowe's? I have to buy chains. And she goes, why are you buying chains? I said, if I leave this lawn furniture in this backyard, we just paid $2,000 for in 1999, this stuff's gone. She said, what's wrong with you? Now, my wife is from Texas. So she says, what's wrong with you? I go, this stuff would not last a day in Chicago. And then my kids got to drive their bikes to school. And they were the only kids in the neighborhood that were forced to lock their bikes. But it wasn't enough for them to lock their bikes. It was their dad showing them, make sure it goes through the tire, to the thing they could steal the seat.
smoke,
Hey, watch the seat here. The seat's the first thing they take. What good is the bike without the seat? So
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And it goes into literally my first bike I had as a 5 or 6-year-old, my prized possession. I take it to the dentist. I had a dentist appointment. I might have been 6 at the end of the Harlem Irving Plaza where the Walgreens used to be. And I park my bike in front for a dentist appointment and I come out and the bike is gone. And my parents are like, yeah. And I came home crying and it was like, you learned your lesson now, didn't you? You got to lock your bike up.
I think it's personal responsibility. They taught us personal responsibility. You come home without a bike, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Not the guy who took it.
Yeah. You can call the police. What do you mean call the police? What are they going to do? It's like, it's interesting. But that's difference. That you had to. We didn't lock up our patio furniture, but I knew people who did, but we didn't have good patio furniture. Yeah. We had an alley. We had a basketball hoop in the alley. We had all that kind of stuff.
See, the alleys in the city were a little different because we were playing, first of all, I remember playing football in the alley, and this was at Laramie and Diversey, and a car comes by, and you have to kind of pull off to the side as the car comes by, and I look at this lady, and I said, hey, Auntie Denise. It looked like my godmother. We call her Auntie Denise. Auntie Denise. She goes, no, I'm not your Auntie Denise, but if you want me to be your Auntie Denise, come on and get in the car. And so you would think, right, the response to that would be, go home. But no, we would then picked up garbage cans and threw it at their cars.
Yes.
We would say words that we don't use even today, and we were 6 and 7. But I can remember there's 2 things that was unique about Chicago alleys. The garbage cans were issued by the city. They were old chemical containers that they would use for chemicals, and then they would drop them off at your home. So they were just metal containers with a metal. They were not garbage cans. They were actual with the top that has the little spout.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
They were not made for garbage, but they were repurposed for your garbage in the city. And those poor garbage guys, it wasn't like there was a truck. They had to pick those things up and the garbage can probably weighed 60, 70 pounds as is. It was all like a metal, some type of metal. So that was weird. But what was also weird was the rats signs that were on every pole, and then at the bottom of the pole so the pole was brown, but at the very bottom of every pole was black because that was rat poisoning. We're playing in the alley with chemical drums and rat poisoning to kill the rats, and we're playing football, and the football would hit the pole. We'd be like, whatever.
And yet here we are. We survived. Absolutely.
So I think that's why he hired us, because of our resilience.
Resilience. There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what? There's something to be said. Our little football, we always had our little baseball field and little football field. But when we were younger, there were factories in Norwich and, that side of the city. On Montrose Avenue, there was a little factory. I forgot the name of it, but it had green, was something with green. And it was probably 20 feet by, 80 feet. And we used to play tackle football on this little patch of grass. Because that's all we had. I mean, it was the biggest thing, that you could play, and we would do two on two or 3-on-3, and they literally tackle each other, and your head would just miss hitting the sidewalk, if you got tackled. But it was so much fun, and that was urban living. I mean, that's how we grew up.
That's how it was.
It was
Yeah.
fun. And you'd have your hoops. People would have their basketball
That's
hoops off
right.
their garage, in the alley. That's what we
Right.
had, and so it was fun. I mean,
So let's continue down this path of unsupervised children playing and the sport of skitching.
Yep.
Do you remember
Yep.
you would grab the bumper
Yep.
of a car that was going slow, because this was back in the day where every car was rear wheel drive. And if they hit the gas, the back end would hit something.
Yep.
So they had to go slow enough. But then when they got traction to drive in the snow, they would pick up enough speed to go 25 miles an hour. But lo and behold, there would be some neighborhood kids hanging on the
behind.
bumper of those cars, being pulled down the street, and we're giggling and laughing. And then we would always get told, "Where's Bob?" Bob died because he got sucked under the car. But this Bob never existed. It was one of those things the parents would tell us: don't skitch because you're going to die like Bob. But Bob never existed.
We had some pretty bad winters in the late 70s and early 80s where there was a lot of snow.
We had the blizzard in 76, 78.
78 or 79.
Yeah.
But it was like 2 or 3 winters in a row and you'd have these big snowbanks that you could hide behind.
Right.
So, and then the streets before, then they didn't plow. The city side streets never got plowed. And even in Norwich,
unless you're alderman or committeeman or the guy who running street and sands lived in your neighborhood, that thing looked like a Zamboni went down that road.
But the ice would form on those roads, and
That's
literally.
right.
You could hide behind a snowbank. You'd wait for a car to come by. And all the cars had the big bumpers. You could grab on to the bumper. But you know what the best for skitching was? Cowboy boots. So I'm going to tie Texas in because you wore cowboy. I used to have cowboy boots when I was growing up, and they were smooth at the bottom.
How did you get to the process of asking your parents for the cowboy boots?
It was kind of a thing in the late 70s.
Did you want to be a cowboy?
Yeah, I think it was a thing, like because of Dallas, maybe the TV show Dallas,
or maybe the Cowboys, because the Cowboys
they were America's team.
They really were.
They were,
yeah.
And I had cowboy boots from 6th, 7th grade, through most of high school. But the cowboy boots were the best for skitching. If you knew you were going to go skitching, you'd have your cowboy boots on. You'd have to slide, try to catch up to the car, but you'd grab the back.
And your toes would burn like hell.
Oh, they would freeze.
There's no insulation in those cowboy boots.
None whatsoever.
But you didn't care.
You didn't care.
Now you and I would have to take a break.
So when we got our driver's license and we started driving, what did you call your friend that you all? We all have a
Chucky.
A Chucky.
Well, everyone's got a Chucky.
So we'd all go skitching, and we let Chucky skitch with us. But instead of we'd be driving, and then you'd take him and you'd go right into a snowbank.
Yes,
you'd slide
and you make
right.
Chucky do things he didn't want to do.
He would just go head first into a snowbank.
Yeah, but it was never as much fun when we conducted our sketching.
No, that was more
Then
just, they're trying to get on the back.
Trying to get on somebody's bumper.
Absolutely.
And then trying to get on a municipality vehicle like a fire truck, that was always a bonus time. Because those guys tried to stop you, and they didn't know you were back there. It's not like they had backup cameras back then.
No.
But the best was because the fire trucks were so high.
Yeah,
you literally can just. It was almost like water skiing. You were so high up on that bumper.
Speaking of which, did your family ever go up north to like Lake Geneva or have a vacation home? Or
My
anything?
grandpa had a house in Lake Geneva.
Okay.
Which that was fun. Until everyone got chiggers one year. Remember the lake always made chiggers, and we were like, "What is this chigger thing?" Remember this growing up? This chigger pandemic of bugs that would bite you.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's funny.
They would blame the lake on that. But yeah, Lake Geneva was fun, and he had a little house up there. I do remember that. And the Wrigley, remember if you had a boat, which he did, we would go look at the Wrigley mansion that was there off of Lake Geneva.
Wrigley had a mansion, and we took a tour of Richard Driehaus, who passed away 4 or 5. He was a very successful tycoon for investing in stocks and stuff. But Richard Driehaus was a big philanthropic guy, and he had a mansion on Lake Geneva, and we actually toured his mansion 10 years ago, 12 years ago, well, maybe longer than that. But it was beautiful. That's where all the rich Chicagoans would go.
Yeah.
Because you had Lake Michigan, and then you really didn't have, it's
Yeah.
flatland. There was
Yeah.
nothing to do.
Yeah.
You'd have a house or a vacation home in Wisconsin, one of the Wisconsin lakes or one of the Michigan. And that still to this day is a big deal.
Yeah.
If you live in Chicago. So, unlike Texas, you told me a fun fact yesterday. Texas only has one
actual lake.
lake.
Yeah. The rest of are man-made. And I don't know if it's a real estate play, but look at Austin. You have Lake Travis, which is the Colorado River that they decided to bust out the bank and call it a lake. But and that goes from Lake LBJ in Marble Falls, and then you hit Lake Travis, and then you hit Lake Austin, and then you hit Lady Bird, which is in downtown Austin, all the same river.
It's the Colorado River.
The Colorado River that they call lakes, intermediate lakes along the way, and we have hundreds of lakes, but only one man-made lake. So
interesting, because that is such a difference from the Midwest.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. Michigan, for example, I mean, it's all natural lakes.
All natural lakes.
Yeah.
My wife here, Linda, had her family had a place on Green Lake, which is the deepest lake in Wisconsin, I believe it was. But yeah, it was you'd have your summer rental home there, and you'd go up there, and that was your summers. Here it seems like your summers are like Chicago winters because you got to stay indoors all the time.
100%.
I mean.
And even the lake here, I mean, it's like right now, it's 86, 87 degrees in that lake. And
do you want to swim in that?
Well, that's when it becomes so warm. Whereas I don't even think you can right now. If you went to Montrose Beach in Chicago, can you walk in the lake right now without going, "Oh my gosh, it's freezing"?
It's cold. It's cold. Even if it's 80 degrees or 78, you feel it. It's cold.
Yeah, it's a cold lake.
I don't even think it's that warm now.
You have to wait till late August before you can enjoy that lake.
That's right.
But I remember going to. Were you in day camp? Did you ever go to day camp at the local parks?
Well, we had it in Norwich. We had our old grade school basketball coach. If you were into sports at all, he would open up the school gym in the summer, and that's what we would spend our summers in the gym playing all different kind of sports, basketball.
Yeah.
And he'd set up badminton. He'd set up any wiffle ball. We used to play wiffle ball all the time.
Yeah.
But it was basically our day camp that was our day camp. So you probably did that.
Yeah, well, the day camp would send you to the lake 3 or 4 times throughout that summer. But what was fascinating about day camp was every park had them. So when we had Jefferson, we had Wilson Park, and then we had Jefferson Park, and then you had Portage Park, and we had Hanson Park. Hanson Park was kind of the big deal park because that was like it had its own stadium.
That's where Hanson Stadium was.
Yeah,
right?
Hanson Stadium, and then Portage Park. Well, we're talking about jumping out of a helicopter.
That's right.
Portage Park has a 15-meter board, and which is, that's 40 some odd feet. I mean, that's pretty far up there. And we're the brave of the brave kids in the neighborhood would jump off that platform into the water. But what's crazy is no professional training. Anyone could walk up there and just decide to jump off of a 40-foot board into the water. That's crazy. That's crazy.
So, by the way, we will be at PTC this year in Hawaii. And if you want to check out the video of Kirk O'Fell jumping out of a helicopter at, I believe it was 50 feet, we will be doing that again this year. And we'll be doing it both days, right?
We're going to select 12 people per day to jump. To scuba.
To scuba afterwards, absolutely.
And spearfish, I believe.
And then we'll have a barbecue or we're going to cook what we spear.
Exactly. So it'll be a 2-day event, but it'll be 12 and 12. And apparently last year they did it. 11 people jumped and it was life-changing.
Everyone loved.
And you're not just jumping out of a helicopter. You're jumping out of a helicopter by Scuba Steve, which is a trained, retired Navy SEAL. So that's fun and exciting.
Absolutely. And when we were talking the other day, his whole staff is trained. I mean, they do, it's called Trident Adventures.
Trident Adventures.
And ex-Navy SEAL, but they are top notch. They make it safe for everybody. They said they've had kids,
Yeah.
do this with them, but we're going to do a partnership with them.
So you're going to jump.
I think so.
What feats that, Sam?
I don't know. I mean, I did the high dive at Norwich Park, which is what 15 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm not doing. I don't trust myself to do 40 or 45. I saw Kirk had to do. I'm sorry, Kirk had to do this, and like you got to be perfectly.
And
straight.
you don't want to get the water on him.
I don't want.
You
the
don't
water
need that in your life.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm 58 years old. I don't want the water.
Yeah.
So, but we'll do something. And if not, we'll all get together and then we'll scoop afterwards, and we'll have a we'll have a great evening.
Because fun is fun, but we don't want to die.
No.
I mean,
no. I mean, if you're going to die, that might be an okay place to do it, but I don't think so. So we'll be at PTC, and we'll also be at DCAC September 26th and 27th.
Yeah. Golf on 26th, 27th.
Yeah, golf outing on the 26th. Yeah, I think we're sold out on the golf.
We're sold out on golf. Yep.
Yeah. Joseph here is spearheading the whole effort for DCAC. Him and his marketing team have done a wonderful job. But please join us at that conference. It is an unbelievable conference. I went there for the first time last year, and I was just really amazed at how great of an event it is, and how fun it is, and how you feel like I was new to the industry, reasonably new, and it was just a really warm and welcoming place to be, and it's fun. I mean, and the stage, it's at Austin City Limits, and they have acts on the stage and the speakers and everything. It's just a lot of fun. And we have some events and some VIP events if you sponsor and things like that. So it's really worth it. If you haven't checked us out yet please do, because there's still some sponsorships available.
Right.
And we're selling out fast. So I think we're looking for about 1,000 people this year to be.
We're going to have about 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And the value of, it's interesting about, and we've all been to hundreds and hundreds of conferences, and the real value, yes, we're going to have fun. And I think we open the bar at noon, which is an interesting dynamic for a conference. But it really is the connection that, it's priceless. We're all in this business. We're all trying to learn. We're all trying to get better. And there's a platform for that. But realistically speaking, your ability to connect with various levels of individuals, from CEOs down to account managers, is there's so much value in knowing that you are either struggling or succeeding in the same arena, and there's this compassion. It's almost therapy. And I was part of a group like this in my previous life, and we're trying to replicate that, and we're calling it Pro Connect, and it's for our industry's ability to connect with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
And I would go to international. It was called International Council of Shopping Centers, but it was really a real estate convention in Vegas, and I think at its peak, before COVID, it was 35,000 people. It became so big that it wasn't used. I mean, people were they knew how to connect. And if you were but this is intimate. This is fun. I know we're having the massage, and we're having the liquid IV, and we're having just different things you can do as part of it. So it's welcoming to be able to enjoy yourself. And again, this is for anybody in our industry. For any kind of business development, I'd really strongly recommend, having your company either sponsor or at least buy tickets to come and join us at this convention, because it's a lot of fun. And you know what? Kirk knows how to throw.
Oh, he sure does.
A party.
He sure does.
He really does.
And as you all can see, that Sam, our CFO, is the number one salesperson in our company. So he's making sure that this podcast
I'm the broken
is
CFO.
paying for itself through some selfless advertisements, and I love that.